move on from a character.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Okay. Okay, I was gonna I was gonna have the stream up on my screen anyway, so that I could see the chat this time because it was awkward not being able to see the chat last time. Do I need to do any kind of testing? Are we recording okay or anything like that?
Does the stream still look okay, or is it all black on your?
It's still got the. Oh, no, I just saw us, and now it's black.
Great. We're going live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Knowledge Check episode 36.
They're not seeing us, Eric.
There's a delay, Philip.
Oh.
Welcome to episode 36, where Philip and I, are going to be discussing a multitude of things, Dungeons and Dragons. How are you doing tonight, Philip?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing quite well myself. It's been a minute since we've done one of these.
It has.
Apologies, everyone, for our absence. But it's just been crazy, busy. So, yeah, but we're going to jump in to the normal thing. First off, can you tell that we're a bit rusty? Or at least I am. Philip, how about the social media plug? Where can they find us?
Oh, everywhere. We can be found at Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Gmail, and on all of those places we are at The Geek Pantheon.
That is correct. We also have a Patreon. Did you say Patreon? I'll be honest, I was distracted. I wasn't paying attention.
Because I wasn't sure if that's social media or not.
We're social on there. We do things.
I mean, sure. I just didn't know if it counted as a social media.
Well, we do have a Patreon. If you like what we do and would like to see it done just a little bit better, consider heading over there and joining the patreon.com community, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. We have a fun community over there, and we have some wonderful questions over from our wonderful patrons that we're going to be addressing throughout the night. So, yeah. Philip, any new notable news from Wizards of the Coast recently?
I mean, they haven't released any books or anything, right? It's just kind of nothing.
They released one adventure.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. If you want to...
I was kidding. I'm aware of Dragon Heist.
Yes. If you want to head over to our YouTube page, the Geek Pantheon YouTube page, I did a review of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. If you are interested in my thoughts and whether or not I think it is worth your time, spoiler alert, I think it is. So, yeah.
You gonna run it? You gonna try to work it into your campaign?
I think I am. So yeah, I'm excited to give that, give that a run. So, I'm excited to try it out though. So, yeah. But we also bringing back a segment that kind of fell by the wayside for a while. DM's Guild pick. So, I found something on the DM's Guild, that, sorry, those of you saying that I'm only in one of your ears, I am very sorry. I apologize. I think I'm probably in your all's left ear, if I know correctly. Anyway, I found something for free on the DM's Guild called "So a Cleric and a Vampire Walk into a Tavern." And the concept is that it is a bunch of short encounters set in a tavern where some unlikely patrons walk into the tavern. So the concept is, and that's literally each chapter is, so a cleric and a vampire walk into a tavern. So a dwarf and an elf walk into a tavern. So a dragon and some kobolds walk into a tavern. And there's also an appendix with tavern names. But the reason this is notable is because it's basically like an all-star cast of writers for the DM's Guild came together to create this. So each scenario is a different author. It's just a short one-page kind of thing. But it's a veritable who's who of DM's Guild authors. So definitely worth checking out. Definitely worth your time. So yeah. I apologize, Philip. I didn't ask. Have you gotten a chance to read Waterdeep Dragon Heist yet?
I haven't yet. I don't have it. So
Okay.
yeah. I watched your review, and I look forward to reading it at some point, but I haven't had the disposable income to go and buy a D&D book right now. And also, there's not really an upcoming occasion for me to make use of it yet, so I'll probably wait until I'm more at that level.
Yes.
Because my campaign is so very above that level.
Totally understandable. But yeah, that's the big notable news from Wizards of the Coast. I'm sure there's been some unearthed arcanas in our absence, which, you know, we missed him. Sorry. But Philip, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, we're going to try a new format. Instead of trying to do a single topic, we're going to sort of just discuss what's new in D&D, what's new in our games, what we've been playing with as DMs and players, characters we're creating, new subclasses that you're designing, that sort of thing. And our thought process is that this will be a little more conducive to live streaming regularly instead of just once in a while, and it'll require a little less front-loaded work, which will make it easier for me and Eric to schedule these things.
Indeed.
And be able to do it a little more regularly once again. So we do apologize for the absence. We do hope to get back into a regular schedule, and hopefully, if this format works, then this is what it'll be like.
Yes, indeed. So that's what we're going to be doing. Do you want to kind of kick things off with one of the questions from one of the patrons, just since we have a few to get through?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty reasonable idea.
Okay.
So I see we have one from Darren, and Darren asked, how do you figure out how much spotlight to give to different characters, especially involving their backstories or individual character goals, over the course of a campaign? Do you literally keep score to make sure the spotlight is fair, or do you trust it'll all work out in the end?
Yes, thank you, Darren, for that question. Philip, I mean, how do you deal with this?
Well, some of my players have given me extremely detailed backstories, and some of my players have given me very basic backstories. And so I kind of try to look at those backstories and try to work out how do those backstories play a role in the campaign once the campaign's been established. And then I try to work them in, honestly. I don't keep score. I don't really worry about whether or not everyone's getting exactly equal time. I know my players well. They know me well. I think they trust me enough to kind of just go with me. So over the course of, I think, most campaigns, one or two characters, depending on how big your group is, tend to kind of stand out as the leading characters in the story. And whether or not it's deliberate, whether or not it's good or bad, the rest of the party sometimes kind of can become their company, their cohorts. And you don't want to let the other characters fade into the background, but it is okay for some characters to have a more prominent role. You know, if to use our standard go-to touchstone is always Star Wars, not everyone is Luke Skywalker.
It's true.
Some people play Chewbacca, and some players like that. And I think that's what's important, is that some players enjoy not having the spotlight on them. And I have a couple of players at my table who are like that. And I have a player who really enjoys being in the spotlight, but he really just does enjoy just being a part of things. He's not worried about being the main protagonist of the story. He enjoys going along with the others and just getting into adventures.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree that there are a ton of players out there that actually enjoy and thrive in a non-spotlight role. But I will also preach caution to dungeon masters to not assume that they know. Communication is really important when it comes to this kind of thing, and I have a really recent example of me thinking that a player wanted to exist one way in terms of the spotlight and realized through conversation that I was absolutely wrong, and that's actually Randy on Eberron Renewed. I'd kind of thought through the years that I've gamed with Randy that he wasn't really much of a spotlight player, just kind of liked having fun. And then I approached him about diving deeper into his character's backstory and having a bit more of that spotlight time to focus on his character. And he was super excited and really enjoyed it and is really jazzed to continue that. So be sure to communicate with your players and figure out, make sure that they that you all are on the same page, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. But I don't literally keep score at my table. I tend to, if I have quite a few players that like to have the spotlight, or in the example, like where I'm at right now in a home game with a new group that is new to me also in terms of playing, I don't really know where they land in terms of liking the spotlight. I mean, they're all theater people, so they probably all love the spotlight. So, but I try to focus on one or two characters a session until I can kind of get a feel for who really likes the spotlight and which characters are just kind of rise to the top in terms of in terms of the story, I guess, because some characters are going to have the overarching narrative relate more to their backstory, even if you don't intend that as the dungeon master. And I think that's something really important, is just there are going to be certain themes from characters' backstories that are going to line up with the primary story. And like a great example is from our Unfinished War campaign, where we were dealing with Lady Vole as the primary antagonist and really playing up the kind of unfair persecution of her because of who she was and who her family was. Well, we have a tiefling paladin in the party who part of the backstory was being persecuted by the church. And so naturally those themes are going to line up, and that's just going to cause that character to relate more to the narrative than my character, who's just a pilot, a swashbuckling pilot, pirate, all of the above. So, yeah.
And I think it's a two-way street. The more that a player gives you to work with when they're talking about their character and when they're characterizing, and the more that a character becomes invested in the story that's being told together, I think the more often the spotlight tends to go there. And you can use the spotlight to try and draw a character in, and I do that regularly, focus on a character who doesn't always gravitate towards it in order to try and draw that player in, draw that character a little more in, and find out a little more about that character. But, ultimately players have to interact with the story that everybody's telling together in order to find the spotlight if they want it. So there's a little bit of that too. It's not just your job.
Well, and I also think as players become more comfortable with their characters, more comfortable with the story, if you're in a new setting, become more comfortable with that world. I mean, eventually Sam, Merry, and Pippin got to have their time in the spotlight by the end of Lord of the Rings. Even though initially they were very much support players to Frodo's story, eventually they found their moments. And so I think that's an important thing to remember, is that players will grow over time, especially if you're playing for a campaign that lasts years and they're with these characters for that amount of time. Your relationship with that character is going to change. So, well, Philip, we already talked about what's new with Wizard of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons and DM's Guild. We kind of talked about doing this. What's new with your home game?
So
that's a very loaded question for you. Should I go first? Because my answer is far less loaded.
No, I can go. It's fine. So for those of you who on our website read my very occasional blog posts, you will know that a few weeks ago, my characters, the characters in my story, the player characters, were defeated soundly in their attempt to stop the villain from getting his hands on the Doomsday weapon, essentially. In this case, the Starstone in the Galarian inner sea setting from Pathfinder, which is something you can use to become a god. They failed to stop that, and so talking with my players, we decided to carry the story forward instead of starting over. This involved with about half the party dead, by the way.
We have a question in chat from, I believe, one of your home game players.
Yes, it is.
Are we still allowed to talk about?
You're fine. I'm talking about what has happened. I'm not going to what's going in. Thank you for asking, Shara. Shara plays Tess, a wonderful artificer in my game. This is Tess. Yes. And so yeah. So our half the characters were dead, and the villain had the MacGuffin, had the Doomsday device, the thing that they really didn't want him to get. So I really felt like when that happened, we were maybe 2 sessions from done. I mean, it was a big thing. I thought they were gonna stop him, and they would go and actually defeat him, and that would be the end of the campaign. So that obviously didn't happen. So I talked with my players, talked about what they wanted to do, how they wanted to proceed, and we decided we were going to carry forward. And I decided there needed to be a time jump. We needed to jump forward to a time after Thanos has snapped. And after the villain has succeeded, has won, and they're going to try and take him down. So we jumped forward 11 years. We had a session where we played through a game of Microscope, which is a game you can use to sort of tell a big sweeping story. And I altered the rules to sort of contain that story a little bit. So we played through a game of Microscope to set what were the big events that had happened. And the players threw me some interesting curveballs, because one of the things about Microscope is there's not really a GM.
Yep.
You play all together. And while I did set some ground rules because it was necessary, they threw some really big curveballs in me. One of them caused a war to start up somewhere else. One of them caused a part of a continent to be sunk under the water. One of them brought one of them figured out that he could use this to bring back all the NPCs he liked.
Excellent.
Which that hadn't occurred to me, but that was a really and clever use of the system. So we did that, and then last Tuesday we started again with the players and with the characters spread across a continent. I had 3 of them in one place. 2 of them were spread on an entirely different country, and the point was to get them back. So what I did is I reached into one of my players' backstories. One of my players is a half-elven monk, and he used to be a slave to a demon-worshipping wizard. And they occasionally run into cults of this demon, Lamashtu, this demon lord. And a while back, we had this little side adventure where they stopped a group of cultists from implanting monsters in people. And they discovered that their plan had been to implant these monsters in people, let them loose, and then trigger them all at the same time and cause chaos.
Like you do.
Like you do, yes, like cultists do. Not like I do. I don't know about you, but like cultists do. And so in order to try and bring the party back together, which was my main goal for the first session back, I reached for that and had that start to happen. People started, essentially having the alien experience with things bursting out of them.
Yeah.
And I had it happen in both of the places that the players were spread out. And so that thread has become the way that I'm bringing them back. But it's really interesting because they're different people. They're very different people. One of them has died and been resurrected by her goddess. She stopped being a cleric of Sarenrae and has become a celestial warlock.
Which is awesome.
Yes, she went from being a normal elf to essentially being a fire genasi. So she's literally a walking avatar of flame, which is pretty awesome. One of the player characters has lost one of his eyes. One of them used to be a soul trapped in a mechanical body and has gotten a body again. And they've all changed in personality. They've all become a little darker, become a little more bitter. In fact, one of the really cool things when Ilarion, the half-elf, finally got on the speaking stone that he's had this entire time and has refused to answer, and called Tess, the artificer, she acted the way you would when someone that you've been trying for 11 years to get help and who's been ignoring you finally calls you up. And so the party's still split. We got them to the same city. Our next session's a week from today, and it's going to be very interesting. But it's been a really interesting challenge because the players lost. Lost my campaign.
That's a pretty interesting scenario to be in, especially considering I feel like the impulse when the players lose the big bad evil guy fight is that the campaign's over. Just that's it. Mm-hmm. And you said no. We'll go post-apocalyptic with it.
Well, and we talked about a couple ways to do it. One of the ways that we talked about was death. Part of the story is that the goddess of death is dead. She's been killed. And so death is in disarray.
Ironic.
Yes. So I kind of offered them the option that, if you guys just want to get up and go right now, finish this out, we can arrange that narratively. This is our story, and I don't want this to just, and you lose, right? That's lame. They didn't want to do that. And so my next suggestion was, okay, we could jump a long way into the future, play post-apocalyptic with new characters, start again at level 1, living in Hakatep's world, living in the age of Hakatep, and play kind of the X-Men Age of Apocalypse world. And a couple of them basically said that they weren't done with these characters, and that's fair. The characters, in a lot of ways, haven't gotten to run their full arc in many cases. And so this is what we settled on, was we would jump into the future and start again with the same characters, or many of the same characters, and try to fix what they allowed to happen, what happened because they were unable to stop it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my players lost, and we're going to keep going, and they're going to see if they can take him down.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting topic to kind of talk through and talk about. We had talked about right when it happened, doing an episode dedicated to what do you do when your players lose, and it sounds like you've had a great solution. I'm really excited. I'm going to get to play Microscope for the first time this Saturday with a few of our patrons who are in the one-shot Would You Like to Play a Game tier, so I'm very excited to try out the game and play that. I discovered that game over a year ago and have just been itching to play it ever since, so I'm excited.
It's a whole lot of fun. It's really cool. It's very free form. There's no prep. You just need someone to read the rules. They're in a PDF. It's $9.99 from Lame Mage, which is the production company. I think you can also get it on Drive-Thru RPG.
I believe that's right.
Yeah, it's $9.99. It's very much worth it. It's a pretty short PDF. You just need one person to have read through it so they can teach the others, and then you go. There's no prep. It's a whole lot of fun.
Just to address something in chat, Laura, yes, I did pick that game because I don't have to GM it, because for our last game last month, I learned all the rules for the Pathfinder playtest, so I wanted to take it a little easy this month. So, it's also a great tool for any dungeon master, I feel like, to use for D&D, because if you are setting up your home game, and you want to do a homebrew setting, like you're coming up with your own world, and there is a section of history that you haven't come up with yet, and you're willing to kind of relinquish control of that to your gaming group, you could sit down with them and say, okay, we are defining this period of history. Like, going to Eberron, like if you wanted to say, we are going to define the last war. So the beginning is there is no clear heir to the throne of Galifar. The end point is the morning. Let's create a detailed history of the last war. And what will happen is your game group will become deeply invested in that section of the history because they made it. They helped create it. There is role-playing involved in Microscope. You actually role-play out scenes, so it's not just this very high-level creating a history. The term Microscope is appropriate because you do get down to the nitty-gritty moments of these histories. So I'd highly recommend that game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So eventually you and I are going to have to sit down and we're going to have to design the Starstone and what exactly it does.
Okay.
Because I've been declaring things that he does with it, but I have a feeling that I'm going to need stats for it.
Yeah.
But, won't do that here because this is public.
It's just like Lightspeed in the Star Wars RPG. You go as fast as plot.
Well, what's going on in your game?
Well, I have a home game with a family of four and Trevor from the Geek Pantheon, and the much beloved player of the Tinsel character from our short D&D stint on that show. No, we're kind of in a moment of transition. We're done with kind of the prologue. Everybody knows their characters. Some of them got to know their characters and realized they didn't like them that much, so I allowed them to build new characters. Because they picked these characters for like a one shot essentially, and then we decided to turn it into a campaign. So, I've basically kind of been stealing different pieces from different sources. Like they were originally pirates, and we're doing a pirate themed campaign. But I wanted to introduce the Emerald Claw as a villain group into the campaign. For those of you unfamiliar, they are an Eberron faction, basically militant ex-special ops for a country that have since been abandoned by their king. Just the elevator pitch version. So I stole the beginning of Rise of the Rune Lords, the Pathfinder adventure path, where everybody's at the Swallowtail Festival, and the town gets attacked, but instead of goblins, it was Emerald Claw. And I actually stole the stats because I wanted to make the fight more dynamic than what was presented of just, goblins attacking a village. So I stole the stat blocks from Princes of the Apocalypse with the Feathergale Knights riding around on their flying mounts and things like that. So it was a very three-dimensional fight, and it was a lot of fun. And then they chased... I had, for the sake of plot, the reason they went back to this village is they eventually found out through excellent role-playing that the captain's parents live here. The captain's father is the mayor of this town, and he kind of left behind his simple life to go be a pirate. But dad died, mom got kidnapped by the Emerald Claw, and so they went to go chase them down. They are assaulting the tower that this branch of the Emerald Claw is based in, and that's where we had to call it a night. So we are in the middle of a fight and a assault on a tower. But, normal hilarity, they tried to sneak into... Well, they split the party almost immediately because two of the characters, it's a barbarian and a Warforged Juggernaut fighter that has heavy plating, so he has disadvantage on his -2 stealth rolls, or -1 stealth roll. So they stayed behind, and the group that went to go sneak in were immediately discovered, almost immediately. So the other two had to try and sprint in. I didn't hold them too accountable to the fact that they would have no way of knowing that their compatriots were discovered, but they're new players, so I'm not going to be too hard on them. But no, it's fun. It's a lot of fun running for new players. Like the joy of no expectations is a gift that every dungeon master should be reminded of every now and again. Because they're not jaded, they're not cynical. Every trope is new to them, so it's excellent.
That's great. You want to do another Patreon question?
Yes, let's do. Let me get this pulled up. We have a question from Elizabeth with my handy dandy graphics that I have, so you all can read them along with us. Do you have any dice rituals, specific colors for specific characters, how you keep them, etc.? What is your favorite die or die set and why?
Ooh.
Excellent question, Elizabeth. I have I typically for a new campaign or new character go out and buy a new set of dice that the color scheme matches the campaign conceptually. So that's how my dice collection grows over time. I don't have any rituals. I mean, I will eventually grow so frustrated with a D20 that I'll throw it across the room, but I don't have a proper die prison or anything. The only, I guess, ritual, for lack of a better way to put it, or favorite die. So the very first set of dice that I purchased was a blue set with gold writing. And I'm going to dump out my dice and see if I can find it so I can hold it up for you all to see. Now I have just dice everywhere. So this is the D20 in question that I'm now holding up for you all to see. You can tell that the gold paint has worn down a lot. It's not easy to read. My first ever D20 that I purchased, and my first ever roll on it was a natural 20 on a perception check, and I saw nothing. I was so salty over that. But anyway, over the course of to address a question in chat, yes, Laura, while recording Eberron Renewed, I have thrown a die across the room.
That is true.
But during the first session of D&D that we played, this thing rolled probably 3 or 4 natural 20s and rarely rolled below a 15. And the dungeon master at the time was convinced that this was a poorly weighted die that was just naturally inclined to rolling high numbers. I don't know if that's true, but if an encounter seems too easy, this is the D20 that I pull out and just mentally think that this will make things go harder. Monsters are going to hit a lot more frequently. They're going to save more frequently with this guy. See, I just rolled it and it hit a 16. So yeah, that's the only real ritual that I have. Other than that, I don't even use specific dice for specific characters. It's just I go out and buy a new set when a new campaign starts. Philip and I have a joined ritual with our dice bag, where we go out. We have these skull-shaped beads that you can see. Philip and I are both holding up our dice bags for the camera. Philip has a lot more than I do, but anytime we kill a player character as a dungeon master, we add a skull to the drawstring of our dice bags. Because
I actually need to add a couple. Occurs to me.
I still haven't added the ones from Eberron Renewed, so I need to add some spoilers. What about you, Philip? Do you have any dice rituals?
I guess the closest thing I have to a dice ritual is my player dice and my DMing dice in separate bags. I realize, as a rational person, that this is impossible, but I swear that when I play with my DM dice, I roll worse. So I keep my DM dice in my very first dice bag, which is a cheap little kind of, I don't know, that microfibery stuff that all cheap dice bags are made of.
Yep.
And that's my DMing bag. It's got my skulls on it. It's also got this little crocodile pendant that one of my players gave me for a Christmas present because his favorite NPC in my game, or well, up to until I introduced the kobold sharpshooter Levexi, his favorite NPC was Khalid, who's a riverboat captain / druid of the river and friend of the gigantic gargantuan crocodiles that live in the Galarian equivalent of the Nile. So that's my DMing bag. I have 2 other player bags. I have one that's just a general player bag, and then my wife made me this lovely crocheted dice bag, which is my Eberron Renewed dice bag. And the only reason I have that is because it travels and it's small.
Yeah.
So when I come up to play that, I do have a favorite die. I have this one. I don't know if you can really see it very well because I can't get the light through it from this angle.
It's very shiny.
It's kind of clear with sort of blue veins inside it. And I bought it loose because it reminded me of a dragon shard. And I was about to start an Eberron game. So I bought that, and that's probably my favorite die. Just I like the look of it. Excellent. I do also have different dice for different characters. That die is in my Barrack set. This die is one of my Drakir dice. It's just sort of smoky and dark, which is fitting to Drakir. So yes, I buy a new set of dice every time I have a character, and usually try to roll with them unless they betray me, and then I switch.
Elizabeth has another question that I just want to knock out real quick, so let me pull it up real quick here for all the people watching video can see it. How do you carry books with you when you play somewhere other than home? Is the person who's hosting responsible for materials, or does everyone bring their own? My husband runs our Pathfinder games, and we play at a friend's house because they both play and have 2 daughters. We end up carrying 3 totes of books everywhere. Whew, 3 totes of books. That is a lot.
Pathfinder.
Yeah.
3 totes of books. Pathfinder. That's what made sense. I skipped over Pathfinder when I read that, and I was like, there aren't that many books for 5th edition, but Pathfinder, no, that totally makes sense.
See, here's my thing. I'm a digital person, so even when we were doing Pathfinder, I had the PDFs, and I took my computer, my laptop, or a tablet, and that's what I do. If I need, the only book that I'm taking with me is the Monster Manual if I'm going somewhere to run a game. And that's maybe the Monster Manual. But I don't run my home game here at my house. I go over to, it's a family of 4, so I go to their house because they give me food and beer in exchange for my DMing. So
that's a good deal.
Yeah, right? So they have the Monster Manual, they have the DMG, so they have all of it. I don't need to worry about it. What about you, Philip? How do you carry your materials?
My house is the gaming house. We've got a room set aside or most of the room is set aside for gaming. It's my wife's office when it's not game night, which is why there are swords on the wall behind me. It's got my shelf full of gaming books, which maybe you can kind of see there, and a bunch of other things. And our giant gaming table is in here. So I host, and so my books are here. It's been a long time since I traveled to run a game other than to Gamer Nation Con.
Yeah.
Where I ran Fate, and Fate books there's only 3 Fate books, and I just carried them in my backpack. But usually when I'm traveling, if I need them, if I take a book, it's just the player's handbook, just so I can reference rules. But usually if I'm traveling, I also have PDFs of the books that I need. So when I come to play at your house, when I come to play Eberron Renewed, I usually I don't bring any books. I just have the PDFs, and you have the books. So
and I have D&D Beyond now, so all I need is an internet connection, and I'm all set.
Sure.
But I will. Laura asks in chat, what's so special about the Monster Manual? When you're running a game, it's a good thing to just have for monster stat blocks. Now, it's also easy to search a PDF if you have it set up to be searchable, or search D&D Beyond, or search on the internet. But
well said, Callie.
Callie just say monsters are important. Laura, yes, all the books are important. The DMG isn't super important in the moment of running a game. It's an important read. If you're DMing, you should absolutely read it. The player's handbook, sure, to look up spells and things like that, but usually my players have that, or I have access to it.
And Eric trusts us.
I do trust my players, sometimes to a fault. So I cannot remember the last time I audited a character sheet. So, but I will say, to address Elizabeth's question of a instance where I've seen somebody have to bring a lot of stuff, when GM Chris from the Order 66 podcast, came to my home to run us through the Forgotten game that he ran us through in the Star Wars role-playing game system. He had this incredible bag. It was German. I forget what material it was made out of. Philip, do you remember?
I don't, but it was awesome.
Yeah, it was some specialized material, and he had a giant like architect blueprint
like a portfolio. Yeah,
a giant portfolio for all of his maps.
He probably had it custom made on one of his international adventures.
Yes, probably. He did give a cool tip. This is a fun Chris tip. So he actually has a teacher supply store near where he lives that will laminate his maps for him for like 25 cents a foot or a yard. It's something absurd. So that's something to look out for. If you have a teacher supply shop near you, go see what they charge for lamination, because you could probably go get your maps laminated for the cheap. But he carried them all in a giant portfolio. So, yeah. Well, now's as good a time I need to talk about a new D&D project that I'm working on. Many of our patrons may know about it because I've done a few exclusive patron videos about them, to kind of talking through my process. And I've put up some PDFs, but I'm in the process of making some subclasses for D&D 5th edition. And it just kind of, by happenstance, turned out that I'm making the Universal Monsters verse in subclass form. So I have a fighter subclass that is a lycanthrope, a vampire warlock patron, and a mummy sorcerer bloodline thing, which I'm really happy with the way they've turned out. I still need to do all the fancy formatting to the mummy, but the lycanthrope and the vampire look like they're straight out of the player's handbook. Not really, but as close as I can get it.
I mean, I think they really do. I'm
well,
going
thank
to make you format all of my stuff.
But no, it's a lot of fun. I've been watching Mike Merle's Fun Happy Hour, where he kind of has walked through making subclasses, and now he's talking through making monsters. But it's been very educational. I had started making my own lycanthropy class, and once I started watching that, I backed off. I see Will in chat saying, yes, the 5e Weretouch Master. I swear I did not look in the Eberron campaign guide or see that until it was pointed out to me after I had made it. But I did read it and was like, yep, it looks like I just adapted this to 5th edition. But I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the abilities. It might be balanced. I don't know. All these things are not play tested in any capacity. So if you all want to play test them and send me feedback, that would be great. So, Laura, I want to play that sorcerer too. The sorcerer concept, I really want to play this character, because the sorcerer origin, since it's a first level thing and it's a mummy, the flavor that I gave it was that you are newly resurrected. Like, you are a mummy that has just been woken up. And so kind of you watch these mummy movies, like the outstanding Brendan Fraser 1999 The Mummy, or the passable 2017 Tom Cruise The Mummy movie. You see that the mummy grows in power over the course of the movie. It's not until the third act that they're creating the giant sandstorm with their face in it, which is in both of those movies. Have you seen the Tom Cruise one?
I haven't yet.
The Book of the Dead from the Brendan Fraser one makes a cameo in it. So it's set in the same universe. Okay, Laura, I'm seeing in chat Laura saying that her and a few of our other patrons are, she says totes not planning, but I'm assuming that means you are planning a monster game with those classes. Please do that, and please let me know how they play. But I really want to play that character, because the idea of playing a resurrected entity just sounds really intriguing. So
it does sound really fun.
But what? You sound apprehensive. Give me feedback.
playing a resurrected entity, I was making
a joke.
To
Gotcha.
Eberron Renewed.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand now. So no, that's
no. Your thing looks really cool. Like I think the mummy thing looks awesome.
And I'm trying to figure out. Philip and I had a phone conversation this morning about trying to do Frankenstein as either a subclass or a race. I like the idea of doing a Van Helsing type character that's just purely non-magical, trying to do that. No spells or anything. So I might look into that. But
you know, it occurs to me we had talked about the fact that the Ranger Monster Slayer exists, but it occurs to me that there also have been a couple of attempts through Unearthed Arcana, and I think Mike Merle's Happy Hour, to do a spell-less Ranger, and so I wonder if you could mash those two together.
Yeah.
And get what you're looking for.
Possibly. That would just be a matter of essentially just creating a ranger subclass where you're not like you're using your spell slots for other things.
Yeah.
But the big thing I
saw one of our patrons suggested it as an artificer subclass, and that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
I thought that sounded really like a really clever idea to play on the gadget side of the. And when we say Van Helsing, we're talking about the Hugh Jackman movie. Not
Anthony Hopkins,
actual character from Bram Stoker.
Yes. No. Next, I'm going to try to create Keanu Reeves' character from the Dracula film.
Why?
Just because, Philip. God. But no, that's the current project I'm working on.
What's that class? Aristocrat.
Yes. I'm also going to try and I really want to write an adventure set in Waterdeep. Reading through Waterdeep Dragon Heist, it's a really cool city. So I might write up an adventure to put up on the DM's Guild. We'll see. Yeah, all the stuff I'm talking about, once it's all formatted and done and completed, will be up on the DM's Guild. But for all of our $5 a month and up patrons, they're going to get all of this stuff for free. So in fact, I did the fully formatted final versions of the werewolf and vampire and put it up there for them today. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on in terms of D&D projects.
Cool. A while back, I started working on a bunch of rules for the specialized groups of drow that we find in Eberron. So designing the Umbragen, the Sulatar, and the Vulcoridal. Some of those things have shown up in a couple of places, or in at least one place on the DM's Guild, but I'm not satisfied with the form that they've shown up in, so I probably still work on them. And then I also built, for the Umbragen Drow, for non-Eberron readers, the Umbragen live deep beneath the earth in Kyber, and they are constantly battling the aberrations of the Dalkir. Drakir from Eberron Renewed is an Umbragen, and they, as a race, or as a culture, have a connection to this mystical force called the Umbra, which is dark and kind of necrotic and kind of destroying their souls as time goes on. So I built a Warlock patron for that, which Drakir has a few levels of at this point. So I'll probably make Eric format those things, and then maybe those will go up too. But those are also on the DM's spellbook for our patrons. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I've been doing. And then other than that, I need to design stats for the Starstone, as I already mentioned.
Yep.
Probably need to stat out some of the big bad guys for my game in a more thorough way than I have up to this point, because I haven't needed them until recently. And I'm doing a whole lot of mini painting.
Yep. I also need to, I'm kind of in a bad spot with my other game, because where we left off, I have no idea where my players are going to go for Eberron Renewed, the actual play podcast that Philip and I do. We left on a note where it's just kind of like, I sat down to try and plan and realized I can't unless I just have an NPC show up at the start of the session and go, I think we should go here.
Hey guys.
And knowing you all, you would not listen to them. So it's all for naught.
We'll suspect them immediately. Throw them off the deck.
So
I don't corrupt my characters. I mean, Drakir, but that's because he's an Umbragen. The Umbragen are just that way. That's Keith Baker's fault. Blame him. But Barrick, what's happened to Barrick is only like 55% my fault.
don't you put any of that evil on me.
No, a lot of that evil's definitely on you.
Nope.
You're the first one who personified the sword, and then I now play the sword. So the sword is who you made it.
Yep. Let's go for another question. Let me get one pulled up real quick. I am not prepared for this, so
That was your idea.
I know, which makes me sound even dumber. Just because we're going alphabetical, Irene asks, what do you find to be your favorite ways to keep your campaign notes, NPCs, locations, character info organized? I do declare. Philip is holding up his notebook.
This is my DM's notebook. This is all, none of this is secret stuff. It just occurred to me that holding up notes for my camera. This is all from last session. I found a notebook at Office Depot on their clearance rack that was this weird sort of disc binding.
Yes.
Which I thought was really cool because the pages can come right out. And then, I don't know how well this is showing up because there's a delay, so I can't see what it's doing in real time. And then they just push right back in due to the way that they're hole punched, which is really handy to be able to pull the pages out and rearrange the pages when my players go somewhere entirely different and I need to move that encounter to another place. And I have it divided into two. So on one side is my Curse of the Mummy's Mask, which is my D&D campaign. And then on the other side, I have this map of Rohan, which is for my One Ring game, which is currently set in Rohan. And so I just have this. I don't have a lot of dividers in it or anything. I don't have a special place for NPCs. When I am playing something that I have monsters for, I'll print the monsters out and stick them in my notebook like that. And I just keep a rough outline of my next couple of sessions. And usually my players abandon it. Really fast. Well, my players don't abandon it. My players don't do what I expect them to do, and then I abandon it. So actually writing adventures doesn't happen. I plan kind of what I expect to happen the next session, and I keep track of what the bad guys are doing, and then I just try to keep up with my players.
Yeah.
So my whole game is a little bit like Microscope. It's just sort of everyone doing a thing. Laura, no, I do not do any planning on my computer. I tried that a few times back a long time ago when Eric and I were running Unfinished Wars, and I do use a OneNote document to plan for our patron game because me and Eric are co-DMing that, and so I want Eric to be able to see my notes. But it hurts me a little bit to do it on a computer. No, I agree. I think it feels better writing it down. I think better writing.
You could just handwrite it all and then take a picture and upload it to the OneNote, and then I could just see.
I could, but then you'd have to try and interpret my handwriting translated through my phone's camera, translated onto my computer, the internet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I probably to the surprise of nobody, I am the opposite of Philip in that I do have my Rocket book that allows me to write and then scan into OneNote when I feel like handwriting stuff, because it is nice to kind of sit there with a pen in hand and jot out notes and brainstorm that way. But I am wholly a digital baby. I have OneNote that I keep all my notes organized in, all my NPCs, all my campaign ideas. So I honestly have an entire notebook in OneNote that just for like Eberron Renewed or for my home game that just says campaign ideas. And it's just a bulleted list of 1 to 2 sentence thoughts as I read through a source book or something and jotted something down, or typed something out rather.
I also just like buying notebooks and journals. I like them.
Yeah.
And so this is also an excuse to feed that habit. And one of the fun things about doing it on paper is that when you're cleaning out the garage or cleaning out a bookshelf, sometimes you find an old notebook that you wrote down notes for a couple sessions of a campaign you ran several years ago, and you remember, oh yeah, we never did. And that's kind of amusing.
I just realized this entire stream I've had a feather in my beard, and nobody in chat has told me, so I'm upset at all of you. I've just pulled it out now, and I'm holding up and examining it. So, thanks a lot, chat. And Philip, anybody who's looked at my face.
I was entirely unaware, although watching you get the feather was really amusing.
Yep. Anyway, pawing at the wrong side of my face. So yeah, I'm wholly digital. I like, and now with D&D Beyond, I utilize that a lot, in terms of monster cards and things like that, and screenshotting stuff and putting it into OneNote. So yeah, that's what I use. And I really like it. But the downside, as Philip said, like Philip came across a notebook that he had all of his old notes from our Unfinished War campaign in, and the sequel campaign, and was able to take a trip down memory lane. Whereas I don't have that. All my stuff was digital. Over the years, replacing computers and hard drives failing, all those notes are lost. Thank you everybody for now telling me that there's a feather on my face in chat. I appreciate it. So yeah. But no, I'm excited. Going back to what we were talking about before with Waterdeep Dragon Heist and my home game, I'm probably going to start pulling elements of that into my home game, which I'm excited about. Get them into a major metropolitan area and start going nuts with that. So that's going to be exciting, running an urban campaign. I've never really run a purely urban campaign, but I think I might make them like urban pirates. I'll feel them out. See, I mean, if they go and they are engaged with the story, urban pirates, like that thing that
just call those muggers.
Yes, but it sounds cooler when you say urban pirate.
We're pirates on the street.
So anyway, so I'm excited to start diving deeper into that book.
Perhaps water deep.
Had
to be done, Eric.
Had to be done. So yeah. But anything else you would like to discuss tonight, Philip? We do have a couple more questions, but
let's keep going with the questions.
Okay. Let me get the next one pulled up and prepped. We actually only have one more question, and it is from Ryan, one of the members of our patron campaign. And it is, now that you've got a D&D Beyond account with a legendary bundle, are you going to make joinable campaigns for the renewed crew and or the Patreon game? Campaign tools like Encounter Builder are on the shortlist in development, so I expect you'll be eager to test them out, test out the relevant update when the relevant update hits. Yes, I'm very excited for those, the Encounter Builder and the DM tools. They've been focused on character builder and the player tools. I'm excited for them to give some love to the DM side of the screen, because that's what I do. I'm lucky enough to have recently joined a play-by-post campaign, but we haven't actually started playing yet. We're still in the preliminary kind of session 0. But I'm a dungeon master. That's what I do, in spite of the fact of continuously asking people to run games for me so I can play in them. I mean, this is not a lie. When we first came up with the idea for Eberron Renewed, I desperately asked Philip to be the dungeon master for it. But
And I said no.
Philip had his own home game at the time. I did not, so...
I still have my own home game.
Yes.
I have 2 home games. I don't need 2 home games and your game. And I have 2.5 games, so I'm also half running the Patreon game.
So anyway, I'm still DMing exclusively, so I'm excited to try out all those. We started the process of getting members of the Renewed crew that want to use D&D Beyond to use it. Some of them don't. So
that is accurate. I don't like D&D Beyond. It's fine. I'm glad people like it. I hope they'll continue to do interesting things with it. But I write notes on my character sheet, and I like to add little things in the margins to remind myself that I have this thing that I can do, and we have house ruled things, and Eric gave us very special magic items, and also you're wrong. Physical books are awesome, and digital is not the way to go.
Well,
so
I apologize, Glenn. I agree with you, and I also think that Nico's opinion of liking the physical books is valid also.
Listen, Glenn's great. He's just also wrong. It's okay. Behind my computer screen, there's a giant wall of books. So, anyway, yeah, I like being able to write notes on my character sheet. I like being able to track things on it with a pen. I use my tablet when I'm traveling, but I have a notes app that will let me upload a PDF onto it that I can then write. See, Will gets it, and so I keep notes on my sheet, so I don't like D&D Beyond. If they do an encounter builder, I might think about using it for monsters because that's handy. But yeah, the thing I liked about the digital tools for D&D in 4th edition was their virtual tabletop, and that's not there.
Yeah,
and probably won't be because they're not going to compete with Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. So.
I mean, if they stop supporting them, then they could compete pretty quickly.
They could compete. I just think they're not going to try to.
Yeah. But no, I like the digital tool set. I'm enjoying my time with D&D Beyond, and I've been using it at the table since I've gotten everything set up, and I really like it. It makes things really easy to look up spells, and I can do a better job of keeping track of my players and making sure they're not just saying, yeah, this spell that's first level does 8d8 damage. So I'll have to check myself and make sure I didn't give them a homebrew spell that's horribly broken, which is also possible. But that's just...
You gave me almost everything insanely powerful that I can do.
Yeah. And then there's moments where you do them, and I go, wait, hold on, that's a bonus action? We need to revisit this. So Laura has a question in chat about your other game. Your One Ring game, I'm guessing, is what she's asking about?
Yeah, I have a slightly less frequent, about every 3 weeks, I have a group that gets together and we play the One Ring, which is set in Middle-earth. Our current game is set in Rohan. At the moment, they're tracking down some horse thieves, which, if you know anything about Lord of the Rings, you know that would be a big deal in Rohan, who were stealing horses, particularly black horses, and smuggling them and selling them out of Rohan. They came upon the people who intended to buy the horses and killed them, because this is a pretty aggressive group when it comes to combat. This group of characters, this is our 3rd group of characters. We've played 2 other campaigns that have each lasted about a year, and then we moved a few years on and created a new set of characters and a new adventure. And their last adventure, they were trying to negotiate the surrender of the horse thieves when one of them rolled what amounts to a critical failure. So every time you roll a critical failure in the one, it adds to this counter for when the eye notices you and causes it to happen. And if any of this doesn't make any sense, then you probably don't read Lord of the Rings. And that happened. And so this put them in a very bad position, because not only did the horses inside stampede due to the actions of one of the players in an attempt to get the horses out and get away with them, but also the orcs who were coming to escort the merchants back with the horses caught up with them and attacked. So our next game is Sunday. And we'll see how they get out of this, because they're between a rock and a hard place but yeah, that's my other game. The characters are 3 female riders of Rohan, 2 characters are from Gondor, and 1 character who's new because the previous character of that player died, doing something brash and brave, but also a little reckless. The new character is an ex-merchant from Lake Town, who's found his way down into Rohan. So, yeah, but it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it if you like Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Well, very cool.
There are too many RPGs you need to play, and that is just always true. We're living in a renaissance of RPGs coming back out, and it's just, man. Yeah.
Would you like to give an update on your Destiny Genesis hack?
One kind of cool thing I've worked out, that there's less that I need to hack than I thought, because the big tricky thing with Destiny is working out how their pseudo magic system works in an RPG. But as it happens, the way Genesis does magic, where doing magic causes you strain, which is a meter that ticks down, and then you can recover strain, taking it back up, actually kind of works pretty well for the way the Destiny powers kind of work, is you generally go into a big encounter with them at full, and they get down and you have to build them back up. And so there's the magic system, I think, will work pretty well. And so the main thing would be designing archetypes, which would be the thing I would still need to do.
Shout out to GM Phil of the Order 66 podcast for his City of Heroes Genesis hack.
Yeah, that was awesome.
You were equally astonished and angry at the same time once you realized the beautiful simplicity.
Well, yeah, and what he did is a little different from what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What he did is he just didn't try to use them. Just built superpowers and said, you can do this.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the thing to do, is just to be simple about it and say, your character can do this, instead of trying to manipulate the system.
Build a whole system economy into it.
Yeah. So I need to play it and see how it goes, but I think the magic system works pretty well.
Yeah.
And I need to build archetypes and then build some pre-generated characters before I can actually try it out.
Yeah.
But yes, this is something I'm home brewing.
Well, and something that I've been working on since last April. I've kind of taken a break from it to build my universal monsters, but I need to refocus. And now that I have a better grasp on building subclasses and doing this kind of homebrew stuff, thanks to Mike Merle's efforts, I'm reinvigorated. But at Gamer Nation Con 2019, because the theme is superheroes, I'm going to be doing an X-Men in Eberron one-shot. So I'm working on building out the X-Men as pre-generated characters. It's tough, because some of the most popular X-Men are way too powerful to be RPG characters. Like, how do you build Wolverine? You just have hit point recovery 20 at the start of each of your turns, as long as there is a molecule of your body left. So that's the biggest struggle, is like Cyclops, Jean Grey, Kitty Pryde. Like, I can build those characters, but it's the more powerful ones that are tougher. So yeah. and I think in my write up for the concept of the one shot, the mutations come from aberrant dragon marks, so they're all aberrant marked. I will not be cosplaying at Gamer Nation Con Laura. Thank you for the request. Thank you for saying please.
Cosplay as whom?
Like,
as an X-Man?
I guess, or as a superhero. Yeah, Phoenix Force Jean Grey would be too powerful.
You gotta give more details, Laura. You gotta get it detailed in the request.
The problem is that there's very few bearded superheroes that
is a problem.
It's a problem every year around Halloween. It's like, who can you be? So anyway, but yeah, so that's what I'm working on, and building X-Men mutations into the system are interesting. Will in chat suggests Shifter Barbarian. Use those shifting bonus hit points to represent regen. Get a custom item that casts heroism on you for Wolverine. So
wait, cosplay as Shadowcat? Because I would enjoy watching that very briefly, and then I would not enjoy it at all.
Nobody's going to enjoy that. I do see where JT was the original one to suggest that I cosplay. Anyway,
I don't know if I'm going to run anything at GN Con or not. Might try to work up my Destiny thing by that point. That's far enough out that I could probably get it, and that's kind of superheroes. Or I might just carry something in my bag and run it for a pickup group the way I did last year. I kind of enjoyed throwing together a fake game with you and Jeff and Laura and some others. So
yes. Well, I think it's about time to call it a night. It's getting late. Not quite time to turn into a pumpkin, but getting there. So thank you all. Thanks. Big shout out to those of you that joined us for the live stream. Those of you that are now watching or listening, thank you all so much for joining us as well. And yeah, please, if you want to be part of the conversation, head on over to our Facebook group. Or if you want to join our Discord community and maybe get in on some of the stuff that we talked about over the course of the show, head on over to patreon.com/thegeekpantheon to join that community. Anything else you'd like to say, Philip?
I'm interested to know who Laura thinks I should cosplay as, but other than that, no, this was fun. I enjoyed this. I like the sort of freewheeling nature of it, and let us interact with the fans a little more.
Yeah.
So I hope it's fun to listen to, even though you can't hear questions and comments that are being made in the chat.
Yes.
So I don't know what we can do about that, but let us know if you have any suggestions as a listener, what we could do to make that more pleasant.
Yeah.
I can imagine listening to one side of that conversation was less fun.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching and or listening. And once again, I am one of your hosts, Eric.
I'm Philip.
And I don't think we did.
Sorry, it was just suggested that I cosplay as Emma Frost, and that's horrifying.
You got the figure for it, so.
Oh, that's cute. I do have a Hawkeye costume.
We will see you next time.
Bye.